Inflation's going nuts, interest rates keep going up, and everybody's talking about a recession. But you're wondering if it's still a good time to buy a house in 2022 going into 2023. Better yet, are we in a buyer's market? Well, let me answer that. What's going on, guys? Brandon here, aka your favorite Minnesota realtor, and today we're going to be talking about buying a home in 2022 going into 2023, and if now's still a good time. So in order for me to answer that question, I have to break some things down first. So if you're currently renting and looking to get into your first home, then I would hands down say that now is still a good time to buy. And I would even dare say it's probably been the best time that it's been in the last 3 years. Now, the reason being is because when COVID happened and interest rates were at all-time lows, it caused so many people out there to buy homes because they could get a more expensive place with a lower monthly payment. Now, the only downside to that was that it drove demand way past what actual supply was, increasing prices drastically over a short amount of time. People were waiving home inspections, there were 30 plus offers on the same home, $50,000 over asking price, sight unseen offers, and anything that you could name. It really made it almost impossible for a first time home buyer to compete. Versus now, where interest rates are higher, but there's less demand in the market, meaning that there's little to no competition. Homes are sitting on the market way longer and prices are even coming down. In a lot of cases, you can negotiate price reductions, get seller paid closing costs, keep a lot of money in your pocket, and even negotiate seller repairs if needed. Things that were absolutely impossible to do over the last 3 years. Now, yes, your payment will be a little bit higher because of interest rates, but interest rates aren't permanent. Now, if you buy a home now and interest rates go down in, let's say, a year from now, you can just refinance and get that new rate and ultimately get a lower monthly payment. Whereas if you buy a house at a certain price, that house is going to be the same price for the matter of that 30-year mortgage. Another way to get around high interest rates right now is that most lenders are also offering what's called a 2-1 buy down program, in which you get a 2% lower interest rate for the first year of the mortgage and then a 1% lower interest rate for the second year. So as an example, if rates are currently at 7%, then that first year rate that you would pay is 5%. And then the second year it would go up to 6%. And then after that, it would go up to whatever interest rates are at that time. Now, the idea of this program is that interest rates will have gone down in the next 2 years or so. So within somewhere in that 3-year period, you would have refinanced anyway into your new loan and locked in your new rate. So if you're looking at keeping a bunch of money in your pocket up front and saving a bunch of money on your monthly payment, then I would highly suggest buying a home right now. Which leads me into my next question. Are we in a buyer's market? So if we're talking technicalities, then no, we're not. But what we're experiencing right now in the market could be compared to a balanced market, which is way better than the extreme seller's market that we've been in over the past few years. Now, the reason why I say technically we're not in a buyer's market is because if we were just looking at the numbers by themselves, then they would still suggest that we're in a seller's market by definition. Now, the way that we determine what kind of market we're currently in is by looking at what's called months supply of inventory, meaning how many months it would take to sell every home that's currently on the market. Now, a seller's market is considered to be less than 5 months of inventory. A balanced market is 5 to 6 months, and a buyer's market is anything 7+ months. Now, in the Twin Cities for the month of October of 2022, we're currently sitting at 1.9 months of inventory, which right off the bat sounds crazy, but when you consider that just January of 2022, we were actually at 0.9, as in 0.9. Good story is we're trending in the right direction. Now, I would also say you should take that number with a grain of salt because over the last 10 years, the highest that number has been is 5 months, and that was all the way back in 2012. And it's been trending downward ever since then. So again, although we're not technically in a buyer's market, it really feels like we are when we compare today's market to what we've been dealing with over the past few years. Waiting for interest rates to go back down before you decide to get into the market is a pretty bad idea because remember, once interest rates start going back down, that means prices are going to start going back up. You can always change your interest rate at any point, but if you buy a house at a certain price, that's the price you're stuck with. Now for the people that already own a home, if you're thinking about upgrading and buying a new one in 2023, I would definitely say that it's also still a good time to do so because you more than likely have tons of equity built up from the last few years. Now, more than likely you either bought your home when rates were super low or you probably refinanced and your monthly payments are really low right now. So if you want to sell your home and buy a new one, there will be 2 things that you'll need to come to terms with first. So the first one is that you'll actually need to get your home ready for sale. I think sellers over the past few years have gotten really spoiled being able to just throw some iPhone pics on the MLS and their house will sell over a weekend with 30 offers. Well, that's not the case anymore. It's actually going to take you longer than a weekend, and buyers aren't going to be lined up at your door anymore like they were during the pandemic. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, am I going to get my asking price still? The answer to that is yes, but you'll have to make sure your house is actually in good condition, and you may have to do a little extra things like staging and other things. And number two, probably the biggest one, you'll have to accept the fact that your monthly payment is going to be a lot higher than it is now due to interest rates. Now, the days of 3% interest rates are over, and that's probably never coming back. So as long as you're fine with those two things, then cashing in on your equity that you've built up over the past couple years and upgrading is still a great idea. Now, a lot of people are watching what's happening in the housing market right now, and we're wondering, is the market gonna crash? And I can confidently say, no, it isn't. Now, the most simplistic reason is basic supply and demand. So there are more buyers out there than there are sellers, and at the end of the day, prices will continue to rise year after year, but just not as fast as they have been over the last two. Going back to the months of supply numbers, the last time we saw a balanced market was all the way back in 2012, which was in the middle of the Great Recession. And as a matter of fact, since 2005, the only time we've seen a buyer's market is from 2005 to 2011, which was the financial crisis. But when you actually sit down and take a look at historic numbers, you can clearly see that over the last 11 years, prices have only continued to go up, and numbers don't lie. So to wrap this up and reiterate, if the sole reason you're currently waiting to buy is because you're waiting on interest rates to go back down, then you're making a big mistake, because once they start going back down, that means prices are going to start going right back up, bringing more buyers back into the market, aka more competition. And although we're not in a buyer's market, this is probably the closest we've seen to a buyer's market in the last 3 years. Now, 2023 is definitely going to be a great opportunity to get in cheap and build equity.